we're good to go here. So first of all, thank you for being here, for finding the time to actually help us here in Brazil to see what the future holds for us and what is the present putting in front of you guys in New York, which is a beacon of nightlife and music and whatever makes our lives move in this sector that was so affected by this new reality of the pandemic. So I'd like for you guys to introduce yourselves, what you do, and as we say here in Portuguese, que apito toca. What's your job and the initiatives that you guys are involved in this fantastic city? Okay.
All right, Jen, if you don't mind, I'll go first. You cool with that? Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, Chico and Fervo Conference for inviting us. My name is Paula Abreu. I work at SummerSstage. It's the largest free performing arts festival in New York City. I've been working there for 9 years now. I moved to New York 11 years ago. And it's a pleasure to be here speaking to you guys in Brazil, because even though I've been in New York for so long, I have strong connections to Brazil. And of course, it's the place of my heart and where I'm from. And I love the culture and the music. All that said, last year, before I start talking a little bit about my work and how last year was, I just wanted to, a full disclosure, I had a baby last year, so I've been a little bit out of everything going on, even though I'm still working and still work at SummerSstage, and but it was like for a few months I was completely focused on the baby. But you know, SummerSstage, thankfully, being a large festival outdoors and free, we're supported by many funders, different types of funders. So we were lucky to keep going during the pandemic. We were not, of course, there were some layoffs and furloughs, but a lot of the staff stayed employed. And we pivoted to a digital programming series. We produced about 80 programs in 1 year. And the festival, the goal was to reflect the identity of the festival online, right? So we have, in a typical year, SummerSstage has about 30 shows in Central Park and 60 plus shows in 15 other parks of the city. So we're really the largest and the broadest festival in New York. And we try to reflect that online. We try to create cover diverse genres, and from dance to music, different music genres, hip hop, rock, global music, indie. And we try to do all that in a digital world to reflect the festival. And also we're very connected to parks, because that's what we are. So we had a few shows also that were outside, and we wanted to keep that vibe of like celebrating the outdoors. So yeah, so that was the basically what we are, who we are as a festival, and who we were last year. And now this year, 2021, we are sort of a hybrid of both. As of now, we've had some shows already this summer, and we're going to have a few more. But we also had in the spring digital shows, and we may have more in the fall. So it's again, I feel lucky that we keep employed and keep working, and it's a festival very connected to the identity of the city. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's who you are. And I know my colleague Jen here, who is amazing. I'm a fan and really admire her work. I know she is the opposite of me. She was really active during the pandemic and created a whole, I'll let her speak, of course, but thank you, Jen, for joining us, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having us. I mean, I was thinking today sort of about what to talk about, and I was thinking about how one of the pieces that keeps me often in live events is that it's almost this lifestyle choice, I think, because it's 24 hours, 7 days a week, and I think it's nice to think about, you having your baby, Paula, and still being, I mean, you've still been on how many calls I've been on and Zooms and whatever else, and this is our life. And here your baby's just going to be like, let's schedule a show and like be all into it, like this is what we do. My baby's 15 now, so I'm done with that part, and now she can help me book the shows, so and in the pandemic, we just double down on our commitment to what we're doing, and I think that for me has been the big piece. Is this is what I love to do. When I stand in a room or an outdoor space filled with music, I feel so lucky. Like just that is maybe the only time in my life that I feel so blessed, you know, just completely lucky. So my work, I own Mean Red Productions. We're independent promoters. We own Brooklyn Electronic Music Festival. Our bookings focus on a lot of electronic music, a lot of hip hop, a lot of niche programming, queer programming. Our markets are New York and Detroit. We were known for being underground. We came from the underground, you know, kind of very off the grid, if you will, in Brooklyn. And now we're very on the grid, for better, for worse, you know? And during the pandemic, I worked to advocate for venues and promoters with the government for grants through the New York Independent Venue Association and the National Independent Venue Association. So I'm the New York precinct captain for the National Independent Venue Association, and you know, and a lot of that commitment to our industry comes from my experience of, you know, raising a family, working and producing shows, and letting venues like venues like SummerSstage let me in to do shows, like, which is what a blessing. So of course I think I'll fight every day, especially when I do crazy shows at SummerSstage like Mickey Blanco and Schoolboy Q, and you guys still let me back, and I'm so grateful.
Those are awesome shows. Those are amazing shows. Yeah.
Some of them went a little better than others, but that's the piece in New York, right? Is that for me, why I like stay as an independent promoter, is I can do, you know, we do about 100 shows a year, and I can book in all different venues of all different genres of music, and there's an audience. And there's a community of people presenting shows who, like, when I say to them, I think this one very specific niche artist is really important to me for this reason. And people like Paula like completely hear me and understand me. And isn't that amazing, you know? Because maybe it's an artist that musically maybe isn't important, but somehow culturally is important, you know? Like there's all different reasons we want to work with talent. And so that ability in New York, for me, is beyond that. I can work with other professionals who understand why we need to present artists all the time and go to the mat for them, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I touched all the points, but that's...
No, yeah.
That's
well, I think it was a great introduction. It will help us go through this time we have and actually illuminate some aspects of your professional lives, and of course that could actually be applied here. Well, congratulations, Paula, for the baby. Yeah. And do you think that you guys, of course, women in the industry working together, do you think that now is the good opportunity to be more inclusive, especially for moms? Like, is that people are listening more to whatever needs that the women working in the sector have, or not? Or I'm being like a little bit too utopian. No, it didn't change much, or now is the time to change?
Paula, you know more than me.
Well, I guess I was gonna say maybe we can compare notes, Jen, because you like have being about a 15-year-old and me now. Like we can compare. How is it now? I'm optimistic most of the times, and I do think that we're progressing into a better world that's more inclusive, that people understand more. But I think we're still very far from really understanding like what is
ideal, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and thinking in live events, I was reading some statistic that from another conference I was involved in that it's something like in the recording industry, 20% of the industry is female or female identifying. And in live music events, it's 5% of the industry. Whoa. And I do feel there's stronger representation in the nonprofit sector, in the performing arts sector. In my sector, which is, though I go into a lot of nonprofit rooms, is very much straight for profit. There's almost no other majority female owners in New York City.
Yeah, because SummerSstage is majority female. Just I mean, I'm not alluding to that, Jen,
exactly.
But it's
amazing.
Yeah, which is very rare. It's very rare.
It's atypical, right? So okay,
very special. It's very exceptional, and SummerSstage has been instrumental in supporting my career. So that's telling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Jen, what you do is right up my alley. You know, I work with Deck Mantle here. I know a lot of people from Detroit, from the electronic music scene, more so than from the live entertainment scene. I have to say that living in New Haven for a while, Cielo and those places, and they kept my sanity.
Yeah,
being able to go to New York, and of course, this is the service that you provide, right? it's a sanity provider for people who actually. I remember the quote by Frank Zappa, right? Without music, life is just a series of deadlines and bills to pay, right? So
Yeah.
I think we provide an essential service, and that was like hard to prove during the pandemic, right? Because all of a sudden it became superfluous, but people saw there is not so much, right?
Yeah.
How was it? How was it for you guys to actually navigate this situation, and of course, including the back and forth of opening, reopening, and the anxiety? I hope, of course, I believe that neither of you will be able to cope with the idea of someone being sick and actually eventually dying after an event that you put together, right? Because this is the nightmare of all producers of events, right? So how was this period of uncertainty and all that? Sorry if it's going to trigger your PTSD, but I think it would be good for you to share this experiences.
I think if I may,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting being in, I will say from a very practical place, being in live events, we're always dealing with health and safety. So this to me didn't feel energetically new. It felt like a new thing I have to learn to manage, right? If I'm doing shows in amphitheaters with an older audience, I have EMTs and they're looking for certain things, right? If I'm doing a show based on the crowd I'm doing, I'm often handling, I know what kind of drugs are going to be there maybe, or I know what kind of problems are going to be there. We're dealing with some real issues with cocaine and fentanyl and all that in New York right now, right? So it was interesting because for me, it made me sad a little bit thinking, well, this doesn't feel new to me. Like I'm always worried about everyone's safety, but I'm always trying to balance my fear and my deep belief in people's freedom of enjoying themselves the way they should, right? So this to me felt like a really familiar kind of internal dialogue in a lot of ways, because I have it all the time when I consider how are we going to search people, at what level, right? What are we doing? Then for this, I'm really thinking deeply, like, how are we dealing with people wearing masks? And I found, you know, what New York was totally shut down. So New York was done. So we were doing small 100-person shows in Detroit outside, which felt hard. You know, it's an illness. You don't know what's going on. A DJ I respected would come and talk to me and he'd take his mask off, and I felt like I had to take mine off because I want to be respectful and it's my job to make sure he feels comfortable. It felt hard, you know, and I think as we're going through it now, it feels very challenging, you know, and I think I do a lot of thinking, you know, like double downing on the belief that people have to have free will and that I have to have faith in my audience for taking care of themselves. And, you know, I have to really believe in their freedom of enjoyment. And then I have to make sure I check in with the artists about what their level of safety is, you know? So I think, I think it's important for me to be honest about the fact that I don't think this is a new consideration, public safety, because I think it's first and foremost, especially as an underground promoter coming from places where we weren't always in totally buttoned up venues, right? That public safety was always where we were at, a responsible producer is, you know? So now this is just a new level of figuring out how to make sure, okay, and again, all the considerations. I'd like all my staff to wear masks right now. I'm not forcing them to, but I'd like to, but I really want to, you know? So you're weighing it out. And now that New York is back open, but we're switching, we're back to being fully vaccinated, you know?
Oh, you are, Jen?
Yeah, in New York, we have to be fully vaccinated.
Yeah, no, it applies to your venues as well, right? Yeah.
Everyone. Though, I feel grateful a little that the Pfizer vaccine just got really approved by the FDA, because it feels to me a little more like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? We have like a buttoned up vaccine instead of a something else. So I like that as a country, we're learning and getting organized. But these are very hard decisions. You know, we watched a lot of venues struggle with this vaccine mandate because it felt very inequitable. It felt very much like certain people trust the government and are going to get vaccines and other communities don't. And we're telling them they can't go out. You know, and New York City was very clear. This vaccine mandate they just put in was, you know, an effort to force people to get vaccinated. They're not doing it for public safety. It was because they need to force people to get vaccinated and they need a way to do it. So again, the interaction we have with the government is a new way for us to really think about how we're mandated and how we're going to interact with them moving forward. And then I think the larger discussion is it's not going anywhere, right? So what do our next 5 years of life look like?
No, it's the post-normal, right? It's the post-normal. Is it here with us?
Yeah, now it's super normal.
Yeah. For us, it's a little different because we're outdoors. What I felt was
so much
during this year, but even though we didn't, like, we were shut down as well for a whole year, but I felt what the big difference was a lot of our colleagues, a lot of presenters came to us as experts in the field of presenting outdoors, and things for us were normal as well. Like, oh, you have to get a permit, you have to think of this and that. Like, people are asking, oh, how do we do it? How do we promote an event outdoors? And it felt like we had so much to share. That said, I think there's still a lot of added security, of course, and health issues that we are learning as we go. Like how, and I agree with Jen, these are philosophical questions. Like, do we want to make a stance and be vaccination only or not? Mandate people to wear a mask or not? Because even though we are in a public space, just to clarify as well, we can follow our own rules within the perimeter that we operate on.
Yeah.
So it's really our choice. What I would say is that I think one thing that of course then did a lot, and we not myself, but the leaders of my organization was very active, is lobbying with the local and state and federal levels, and lobbying not only for grants, of course, for funding, but for resolutions, for like pushing the priorities that we have as a presenter, because they may create rules or guidelines that affect our business. So I think being constant communication with them, and sometimes as a coalition, like I think there was a coalition of outdoor presenters in New York City that met every week, that discussed every week what needed to get done, and then they sort of pushed our agenda and our priorities, and that was important. But at this point, it's still like we're still going back and forth the whole summer. We started with ticketed events and limited capacity, and then we went full, like just anyone can come in, and now I'm back to vaccinated. It's been a roller coaster. But being outdoors, it is easier than indoors, of course.
But the struggle is similar, right? Because it was very, very timely that Jen reminded us that venues and music events, they are at the tension point of a lot of discussions that we have regarding the pandemic. Because whatever you say about going back to classes or other forms of communal living or learning and experience something, venues are they have a different dynamic inside, right? People are together, they are sometimes they're crammed into the same space and all that. So do you guys have some anxieties from your staff and for people who work with you guys regarding this, like people actually not coming back? How was the ratio of people that that's not coming back to the sector now? Artists and workers. How many you guys know in your circle of contacts that they're not coming back to the area?
It's hard to say for me. I don't know if I want to put a number on that. I mean, and of course I know a couple people, but it's hard to give a percentage. Jen, do you feel comfortable like saying it? Like
I don't know. Like I would say in my experience, it's something like 10 to 20%, of people who did work with us sort of, I've decided it's not for them anymore. But I hate to say this, but often it's been like kind of a healthy, like it's people who are making healthy decisions for themselves.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
yes.
It's a hard industry, So
yeah. You have to love it, right? We know you have to love it.
Get enough of a payoff in some other way, right? To stay in it, I think. And I think for the people I know that are leaving it, it's, I think they're making decisions that are for themselves. And I like that, in our company, we talk a lot about having to have self-care be like one of the first priorities. So.
And if there's some positive takeaway from this, let's put it properly, but this hell we just been through, and of course we're gonna face for a while still. It's to actually make you guys a little more unified in some fronts regarding some topics? Did it help galvanize the industry in New York or not? Or it was already organized? How was it?
Oh, for sure. Like, I think in the performing arts side, Paula has an organization that is really wonderful and organizes arts presenters. So that's been coming along since you guys created that. In the for-profit and non-profit sector, we hadn't really come together, and now we come together really consistently to advocate and to understand each other's needs. And we're hoping that in this time we can create more discussion around that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even like little things like I've been pushing for, you know, independent venues or for-profit venues are often considered part of the nightlife economy, whereas nonprofits are considered like performing arts, right? And don't get me wrong, like I do DJs till 4 a.m., 6 a.m. Like I understand it's considered a party. However, creatively, I believe it's just as valid as what happens at Lincoln Center, right? Artistically. So I've been pushing so much for all of us to be on the same page and to just be performing arts, whatever we're presenting, you know? And I think because we really need the state and the city to see us all as valuable. And I think often because, you know, they can kind of relegate us to nightlife and so we're not as valuable. So
yeah.
So we are really pushing the discussion and trying to say, look, this is a massive economy and we need help and respect.
No, and I felt that the competition, I don't know if you agree with that, Jen, but at least in the nonprofit world, that where there was hesitancy and like, I'm not going to share my, you know, my best practices because I'm, you know, that all went down. Now people are sharing what they're doing much more freely and quickly, and because of the coalitions that were created, but also we want everyone else to thrive and not to, you know. So I think that was one of the silver linings, I guess, in the industry.
Yeah,
to me at least, you know, because it's not
right.
Right.
And I would add, I don't know if Jen, if you agreed, but like I think we all not only apply to our world, but we all learn how to communicate digitally. And even though there's Zoom fatigue, and I at least, you know, to me that was hard, but I think it was challenging to communicate effectively and maintain a team together in this environment. But we had no other option, right? So I feel that a lot of us individually developed skills and like we did some self-digging, self-introspect learning, and now we are a year after, we are more skilled. We developed abilities to communicate digitally and work from home. You know, it works, and even in our industry. So I see that as also the silver lining. I think we're more nimble and more adaptable than we thought. At least, again, non-profit world, which is, you know, tends to be very old school. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to know the respect the part, but of course there are tax incentives that are very important to our industry. Actually, the thing about Berghain becoming a cultural center in Berlin was important for that too, right? Because the tax bracket is different for that venue now, because it's kind of like a museum. So the money is considered different. Do you see this in the future for like that economy in New York? Is it close, or is it a long way to go still?
Very long.
Okay.
I think we're so far as a culture from deeply acknowledging the importance of performing arts of all kinds. You know, to be honest, I think we're so far away. To me, like what Paula does and what SummerSstage does is at the pinnacle of our community understanding the value, right? But I think, and that's a lot of, because SummerSstage, you know, reaches multiple markets. You know, that they have a very hard job of, they have to reach, you know, like a minimum of something like 10 different communities a season, which is very, very hard to do well. And they do a phenomenal job. But for us to have like one kind of music or one type of music really get, you know, look at how hard it is to get like jazz or blues even identified in a more profound way in the US, even though those are like very established, you know, exceptional genres. I just think as a culture, we're very far, you know. we're very good at figuring out how to monetize culture and arts, you know, like we can figure out how to make a Vegas show out of it. But the deeper piece about ingratiating it into the fabric of our society, that's very different. Very hard for us. Probably not something we do really easily as Americans, you know?
Yeah, I think so, right? Yeah, I said, even for you, Paula, and as Jen said, at the pinnacle of the acknowledgement in our voice.
Well, that's the thank you, Jen. It doesn't feel like that all the time, but thank you.
I know, but it's true.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it. And I know Erica, like my boss, who's very close friends with Jen, like she agrees with me. Like we're trying, it feels like a constant battle for ourselves, even though I guess we are recognized outside, but it's a constant battle in many ways because producing arts that are so diverse, promoting arts are so diverse. It's like we have to. I feel that every is harder because communicating and pushing or reaching audiences, they're very different. It demands a lot of effort in terms of like our marketing teams or how to plan strategically or how to position these shows. And I can't speak about on the politics level though, because I'm not the one doing the lobbying or advocating for more incentives for us. But even at that level, I feel hard. And I'll give you one example. New York had a big show last Saturday. I don't know if you heard about it, Chico. The New York Homecoming concert in Central Park was a whole thing, and it was a whole week of events outdoors in parks. And we, SummerSstage, are the brand of shows in parks. I don't understand. I think internally we don't understand why weren't we involved in these shows, right? Like the mayor who has his own agenda and he did great things for the city, but like he came up with this mega events, and people like us who have been doing the work for years and who are deeply entrenched in the communities, we were ignored. So I don't, that's why I say like sometimes, okay, are we not being noticed? Like what's, so it's ups and downs, I would say.
Do you think going through the more conventional channels would work? Like you guys electing a representative for the sector or not? This is like this will be like futile anyway. What do you think? Electing someone.
I'll let Jen. Jen could run. Jen, why don't you run?
Too much of an anarchist,
Yeah.
But that's what makes me a good advocate. I think we have a new mayor coming in who is very pro hospitality. So I've experienced, he's advocate even for my company when we've had to have complicated interactions with the government, which might have been a warehouse party that maybe almost got shut down. But he really helped us. And so I feel positive about him. A lot of the inroads we're trying to make a bigger push to be heard in the state. I mean, we've had a weird couple of years here. Like Cuomo, the way Cuomo operated was very like singular. So
peculiar.
So now we have another shot, with new administration in the state. I think the biggest thing is really about everyone, all of the businesses coming together and saying, we need a seat at the table. And that's, and luckily Chuck Schumer has been really advocating for us to help, but we need Broadway. We need the Lion King to realize that they're as important as SummerSstage and as important as Avant-Gardener. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we need everyone to understand that it's an ecosystem and that we really just have the same goals and needs. And I think that that's a new way to interact in New York. And I think that we're really looking now for ways to cement that, and I think, and I do, I like that you mentioned Bergen because I do take more of I look at what happens in Europe and Canada, and I think we have to get closer to that, especially in New York, where we move more bodies than anyone else. Like that's, it's not respected enough, frankly. It's just absolutely not respected that, what Paula said, like Paula's organization is moving, I don't know, is it 15,000 bodies a week usually minimum, right? That's a small town. You know what I mean? an enormous amount of people for many weeks of the summer that they responsibly manage, and they should, you know, and they should be heralded by the city as experts. And instead the city was like, oh, we're going to have like, you know, we're not going to,
it goes against what you're saying, right, Jen? We're trying to build in terms of coalition. It totally goes against. But let me ask you this, Jen, do you have Broadway and like, I don't know, institutions like this in your with you in your conversations, or no?
Well, we did with the feds because we lobbied for this federal money, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. Now we're pushing to try and get them involved in the city discussions in the state. So this week I'm doing just a ton of coalition building around that.
Great.
I think, but you know, it's easier said than done. You know, like what again is very American business is just like putting your head down and trying to figure yourself out, you know? But we see now that we have to rely on each other. So I'm grateful in some ways for this moment because we are interdependent, completely interdependent, you know, in every way. So
yes,
and with the restaurants too, right? So so Broadway, we have discussions going, and then also you know, we have relationships with all of the restaurant and hospitality groups. But I think we're pushing and pushing to have something just more deeply acknowledged that about the importance of live music. And I think to me, this is the change and the shift is we're really coming together and saying, this is what we can do as economic drivers, not just jobs and arts are important, right? Like we're really shifting and saying, this is how live music completely changes the landscape of a city, which we've all seen. I'm sure in Brazil, it's similar in markets, like neighborhoods that never had anything going on.
Carnival in Rio, which is like
Carnival.
Yeah,
exactly.
The streets are taken by music and people. Well, debauchery is the right word, right? But people frolicking, having a good time, and even in Rio, they struggle with that. You know, they have the support of the main TV network in Brazil, which is one of the biggest in the world, also. But I don't know if they pull out of Carnival. I don't know what's going to be left. Maybe something similar to Salvador, which is more African, more roots in terms of authenticity. But yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities. But here in Brazil, we face the thing that I think it's the same thing that you guys should endure there, which is the big players. They don't care. I'm sure that whatever Live Nation lobbies in Congress makes little or no difference in your lives. Am I right? So yeah. So there's always the problem of scale, right? Because you guys are doing something in a certain proportion that is essential in the same way, but they don't. They just care about the big ones, right? Which is very unfair and unsustainable.
Well, and that's it, right? There needs to be like our job should be finding, I think, you know, like and supporting new young promoters because they're the ones that are going to interact with the new young artists. Like this is young presenters. Independent presenters, because Live Nation and AG needs them. But I think that Live Nation and AG are thinking, well, we're just going to regurgitate these same acts. We're not going to raise anyone up anymore. Well, where are you going to end up? All your stadium acts are dying off. They're all geriatric. Like you're not. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And then you have the big agencies too, right? The big talent agencies. I remember like a Coachella poster that was like Paradigm, William Morris. They put the agents instead of the acts, and it was hilarious.
It's totally accurate and true. And I think there is, luckily in the pandemic, there has been a breaking up, and we've had smaller agencies created, you know, and we are now having the discussion. Like I know when I'm on the phone with an agent, I just was on the phone with an agent last night who was like, oh, this big artist who I launched in New York, right? Big name, can do tons of tickets. So I launched him in New York. I stayed with him for a while. Now he's doing a Live Nation tour. And I said, why? Like, how is that? And if you're going to do that, why can't you carve out those of us who like have been with the artist forever, who really like deeply connect with artists creatively? Like, and I'll have the discussion. They'll never change or hear me, but I constantly push. You know, I'm just going to push it. I want you as a person to tell me on the phone why you called me to launch this artist, and then when I did, you didn't stay with me for the next 10 years. You know what I mean? What happened in your business?
Very well.
We know. It happens all the time.
Yes. I work in a club, booking talent. So Yeah, I know very well how it goes, and especially here in Brazil. And now our currency rates are killing. I think the whole thing about touring artists from abroad is gonna be a little bit. Well, I don't. I at least slow down because it is unsustainable. They are doing Time Warp here, a big German festival, and it's like 400 reais, which is half the minimum wage, and still it's like nothing in euros or dollars, but still most of the people who go to this festival, they are not going to be able to, because it's untenable, but now just going in a different direction. How is the zoning in New York? I believe Paula doesn't get affected by those aspects of the law, but I guess Jen more so, right? Zoning or times of the day that you could actually make noise, but because people seem to not care if they are drilling next door, but yeah, music, no, please, no, right?
Paula, you do for sure.
I do, exactly.
Oh, yeah?
You're like, you have a boot on your neck all the time.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. So Central Park is well, probably
for the pinnacle, right?
yeah, exactly. No, well, Central Park is, as you can imagine, probably the most expensive real estate in the world, or in the US, is around Central Park, right? So when we have shows in Central Park, we have to stop the sound at 10 p.m. Always the latest curfew. If we go 1 second after, we receive phone calls and complaints from our neighbors, which so it's very strict in terms of sound, what we can do in other parks as well, but the communities sometimes it's not as strict, but we get pushed back sometimes in terms of like the language of artists that we don't want to censor them, but it's very delicate and complicated. So there are there are zoning, but like for sure the police in terms of language and sound, controlling sound, the sound permits, and our neighbors, those are entities that we interact a lot when we're putting together a show outdoors. But that's it. It's mainly that, and it, of course, it's different depending on where you are. Like in Central Park, people are more, of course, freaking out.
Wary, right? With the send button at 9:59, right?
Yes, they're ready. No, yeah.
Yeah, they're ready. Okay.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
And for you, Jen, how's life like jumping hoops and with legislation and regulation in a city such as New York? So, which is like renowned as being difficult to navigate in terms of laws.
I don't know if, well, for me as an independent, I mean, a lot of what I'm running up against is venues that had problems last year with like the health department, for example, are continuing to have problems. So there was a lot of, last year in particular, there was a lot of very deeply expensive and unfair tickets and fines and shutdowns. So on my side, I'm supporting and trying to advocate and help them get reopened. These are venues that I work at all the time. So, and on our side, when we run into it is more when we're pulling permits, that process is still the same. What we're trying to work against now as an organization is we're waiting to see how the city is going to handle regulating this required vaccine situation.
Yeah.
And we see, because last year they cracked down so hard, and then we had this interim period where they didn't crack down. New York is punitive. So if they have and so that was interesting watching that play out, in particular with the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been so important, that visibility and that fight. The venues worry if they supported Black Lives Matter, are the cops going to come and really be hard on them now? So I think we're still doing a lot of waiting and discussing. And as an organization, the New York Independent Venue Association, we're trying to get ahead of it. We're trying to get meetings with the city to say, how are you going to regulate this and what's it going to look like? And then if we see the retaliatory behavior, we can sort of squash it, I think. But I think we're in a little, in between place where we're waiting a bit. Because
the limbo.
Yeah, a bit. I think, a lot of the biggest end goals and why I really got involved in the advocacy piece is this piece about making the enforcement in New York more equitable. It's been profoundly racist, deeply unfair, for years. And I think that I really deeply hope that we're able through this whole time and process to affect a more positive way for the city government to interact with our industries. It's been almost hush, not discussed.
Yeah. Are there like more spaces for you to do stuff? Are you planning on doing something on Little Island, Paula, or any of those new spaces, or not? No? Okay.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a completely separate entity, and that will get into a deeper conversation where like there's a lot of money in some areas and not in others in New York, but that's maybe for another time. But yeah. Well, if you want to go into that, like we at SummerSstage, we produce events in Central Park, but the other 15 parks we're at, they're what we call underserved parks, which is not a good term, but I don't know how to talk about them in a better way. It's basically we are bringing arts and culture to parks that usually don't get them year round, right? And we go there 1 week every year or a few days every year. Little Island was created by I don't know if you know the story, but it's a millionaire who created an island basically, and is now funding the entire thing, which is great. I think it's great. I think the culture, the more the better. I'm not against it. I think it's great, but there are so many areas in need in the city. So I don't know. It's just
they should
it is
should be prioritized, right? Yeah. I think that you do a similar job of what our host Karen does here. Used to do with the Virada Cultural, which is our version of the Nuit Blanche. And then there was a huge backlash, Jen, because Virada Cultural used to be the main stages in downtown Sao Paulo, like derelict areas and all that. But then one of the mayors decided to go all over town, and Sao Paulo is very segregated in terms of revenue, and
of course,
wealthy people they live in the same areas. So I believe the New York is kind of similar in that regard, right?
Totally.
Very segregated, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's very it's very like there are different regions. They're completely different. So if you keep investing in the area that already has a lot, then of course the disparity just increases, right? As more disparity, there's more a gap just increases. Yeah.
No, you guys see the nightlife economy, and of course we open way to other stuff that not necessarily it's positive to the surroundings. Do you see New York repeating that pattern of clubs, venues, and festivals being harbingers of gentrification? So you have a party that arrives there, and then the value, and of course galleries, and then the value goes up, and then you get everything gets bulldozed, and a condo appears. Do you see NY insisting in that pattern of urbanization, so to speak, right?
I think so. Like, like, is it constantly pushing gentrification, like the way clubs are, or the way clubs are moving? Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's just also been the history of almost any city, and also, New York in general, right? Like once things moved downtown to the Lower East Side, ABC happened, and then once things started going to Brooklyn and started going farther out in Brooklyn, I think gentrification and live music and music venues in general, or clubs or whatever, it's like hand in hand, like we need real estate that's very cheap, and then the landowners need us to bring cool people. We're very hand in hand. No, I agree with you, Jen. I think I've been here long enough to actually witness some of that, and I think it's very true. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not a strategy or anything. It's the way things happen, right? And I just based on your last question, Chico, there's a documentary that I watched a long time ago called Park Avenue, that shows the disparity in one avenue, Park Avenue, like the richest families or real estate, and then at the end of the same avenue is like some of the poorest neighborhoods, I guess in the Bronx, I forgot where, or in Harlem, I don't know. But the point is, like, it's so evident that there's disparity, and I do think the clubs and arts continue to bring life and to, I don't know, bring joy to different neighborhoods, and then the real estate follows, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Well, they follow the fun, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Now regarding like the tourist aspect of your economies, do you think it's going to be affected for a while? How you have an estimate of how many of your audience are actually people not from New York?
We at SummerSstage don't. We unfortunately don't really survey because the shows are free. There are no tickets, so people just come in and out.
Yes.
Of course, there are a lot of tourists in Central Park, of course, but in the neighborhood parks that we're at, no. Mainly their community and from the local communities. Of course, the tourists. I couldn't talk about that, and maybe Jen, who has so connections in the hospitality field, but I'm sure it was very impacted, and they're just trying to recover now. Even though it's funny. Central Park is a park with a lot of tourists always, and like it feels like there are a lot of people in Central Park now. I don't know if that's a true reflection of the tourism coming back, but who knows? Jen, do you have an opinion about that?
Gosh, it's such a good question.
Because now I just have to give you like an example. Amsterdam now, they are like actively, they announced they're going to change. They're going to change. They want less tourists from now on, which is for like a haven of nightlife and of course debauchery too. It's weird, right? They say they had enough, especially of course of the English kids going there and getting wasted in the streets, right? Which is a problem, but Amsterdam's getting that stance is weird. But how do you see this unfolding in New York, for instance, Jen, if ever happens?
I mean, we definitely have a lot of. I mean, we're very destination for sure. So I don't think we'll ever turn tourists away. I think we're completely dependent on them, like Amsterdam is. But Amsterdam, I'm sure, is more ethical than we are. We're more capitalist. They're more contemplative or what have you. I think, across the U.S. in music that sort of skews younger, we're seeing things kind of be back how they were. And everything that's skewing a little older, we're seeing more, hesitation and concerns.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how, I think the tourist line is kind of falling in the same way for who's going to shows. Like venues like Avant-Gardner are getting tons of kids from out of town.
Okay.
So, but they really skew with, a younger audience. Whereas I feel like I'm trying to think of who's like a little bit older demographic that's open and doing shows. Well, I don't have maybe a good example.
It's chopping a little bit, Jen. Sorry, I couldn't understand what you just said. I think it's chopping. Oops.
Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can change it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Better?
No, it's better. Could you repeat, please?
The one thing I want to say is now we're really in it where, we're all seeing all ticket sales and attendance go low. Like we're back in this cycle, and shows are canceling. And so we're back in another cycle of seeing a downward trend, in particular with an older population. But in general, we're seeing it go down lower again.
I agree with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think this here we are used. It's not a good thing, but we are used to working precariousness, right? And then I think the pandemic served in a way to weed out some adventurers. At least here in Brazil, that was a fact. There are people are professional. They are like pulling down the standards of our scene, and then these people, of course, they were the first to just get away. But in New York, do you still have these other actors in the scene or not? It's not a playground for people who want to just do things without any regard for like standards, or so to speak.
Oh yeah, there's like there was, in particular through the pandemic, there was like a wild underground scene of
yeah. So I heard, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was prolific. For sure.
But Paula, like they're from, well, I have to say again, the pinnacle of the acknowledgement and establishment of our scene. Do you have many problems with let's say behavior of your audience, like drugs or or robbery or something like that, or the police work with you, not against you, usually.
You're putting me in a tough spot here.
No, but because it's a problem that happens to everyone, right? And we are a long way from getting harm reduction actually an accepted thing. But I'm not going even there. I'm going to how hard for you is to actually ensure that everybody's having a good time in a good way.
Well, it's so there are we have two different types of audiences and types of stages, right? Central Park, we have private security and its own perimeter. In other parks, it's just a park. We don't have a perimeter, so it's all outdoors. So it's, we're not enforcing, we're not checking bags in these other parks with, and in general, we don't have them. And being honest now, we don't have that many problems. I don't recall like seeing anything in person that was chaotic and completely out of control. It's not. But of course, dealing with the police is, for any event producer, it can be a delicate situation. Touch and go, exactly. It can be like sometimes they, we work together well and it helps, and other times they prioritize things that we don't, and there's a bit of tension, right? So it can be tricky. During the pandemic, though, we were not doing anything, so I haven't, I didn't see, and the only thing I saw is people going to parks a lot because it was the place to go, right? It could be outdoors. And thank God New York City has I think the city has about 1,000 parks. So people were outdoors enjoying parks. It was the place to be. But we at SummerSstage were shut down. We weren't doing any events.
Yeah, well, you're too much at stake, right? to actually do something half-baked. And I think we cover a lot of ground here. And so I would like you to provide us, it's just some glimmer of hope or something. I don't know. Now you're in a more advanced stage than we are. So I don't know. People just want. I think they just need to listen that it's going to be okay, even if it's not quite the same okay that we had. And why you. Oh yes, let me ask. I don't know. I don't even know if you are the kind of parent of you will be, Paula. But if any of your offspring decides to go into your business, would you say no, or yes, or you actually encourage? I know it's a tough
one. Well, it's hard. I'm not there yet, Chico. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to figure out sleep and feeding and diaper change. Yeah. No, but I mean, at some point, I think it really depends. If it's a passion, and I think the positive thing about being, and Jen mentioned a lot of times that we live in a capitalist culture, the way America do things, and there, But on the other hand, there are more people advocating. There are more people concerned with human rights and civil rights and vocal, and there's more structure, and so the field that I'm in, and I work with arts and music, but I also care a lot about social change and things like that. So if she wants to follow this dream, of course we'll support her. I think in terms of offering hope and the glimmer of light, we are I mean constant communication with people from Brazil, and throughout this year I felt like that, New York we're getting vaccines, we're coming back, and people in Brazil like, oh my God, we are still such a dark phase. And they're things do progress. Now it feels weird because we are regressing. Everyone is paranoid here with the Delta variant, and while in Brazil things are still progressing and didn't regress that much as far as I can tell, except
we didn't have waves. We just
exactly. It was one, right? But the point is, I think what Jen said in the beginning, I sort of like this perspective of it's another health and safety measure that's the nature of our business. So we always care for safety while having fun, while bringing inspirational moments for people. And I think moving forward, we have to be persistent, continue building coalitions, and pushing for our rights and our priorities, and we'll get there. Brazil will eventually get there, and who knows, maybe in 2 years administration will change and things will be better. So we'll see. I don't know. That's my hope as well.
Oh, I think that's really good. I think I think a lot about, I think the coalition building for me has been, look, here we are all talking. This wouldn't have happened before.
Yes.
And I think I do think it's in a very different way, but almost like a 1960s activist way of people really thinking about living with intention and being mindful. And I think those of us who believe in the strength and power of live music are going to stay in it and work even harder. And that's our nature, right? Like that's not going to change. And so it's like evolution. Like this time just creates stronger individuals who are going to make music and make art, and the people who are going to help support it, you know? And I've seen
more resilient.
My own relationships with artists, like talking with them and, you know, watching what each other's going through and going through COVID together or not, or seeing like what happens as we're struggling through shows, or, you know, making mistakes with each other, and our tolerance and acceptance. Like, I think this should be a time where we really just find our strengths and play to them, you know, and then also a little bit of like making sure to take care of the few who need a little bit of support, which is like thinking about the artists we know that need a little bit of financial help, or, you know. And I think this is all, it's the truth serum, right? These kind of moments are like you said, like, oh right, I did 10 shows in Live Nation last year, but they maybe they don't really care, you know. We're not in the same playing field, and I need to learn how to respect that and think a little different, you know. And I like that truth. I think that's really important for all of us. And I love the Live Nation venues that I do shows in, and blessing to them, but it's a little different than what we're up against. And so how can I find a way for my company and my arts presenting to have gravity in the same way, you know? And what can that be about? So I think we're in it. I think we're compassionate. And I think that, and I really believe that like amazing art's going to come out of this time. I do. I think there's amazing, astounding, exceptional artists that are taking the time to create more fervently. So I like that.
Yeah. Well, if we just remember what was New York when hip hop was born, right? It was bankrupt and with a lot going on in very bad ways, right? So at least we can hope for that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think we're gonna see in the next few years, like still like
what's gonna come, right?
What's gonna
Well, we have to be excited about it. Yeah. But we have to be excited about it.
We have to be excited about it and relieved when we do get to have a show that works. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
I agree, Jen. I agree.
So thank you guys so much for your time, for your insights. It was it was priceless, at least for me, and I know for our audience it will be too. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope we can see each other in person somehow someday.
Please.
Yes, Chico, we have to bring Jen to Brazil one.
That's all I've been thinking about in this whole call. I'm not even paying attention. All I'm thinking is
who will? And I want to. And I'm looking.
And the mind drifting off, right? The mind, blah 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 blah, and just thinking about.
But what about Brazil, and how can I get there? Yeah.
We'll make that happen, Jen.
A little festival by the beach in New Year's, right? All you
That's what I like. I'll be a stagehand. I'll be a PA. Whatever.
Carnival.
Whatever. Perfect. So, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chico. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. You too. Bye.